Hello and welcome to today's Infopedia web conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Operations Tech Talk Mobile Framework. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Solutions Architect Sunil Garg. So without any further delay, Sunil, all over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on the mobile framework. So from an agenda perspective, we'll spend some time looking at the mobile platform concepts. Then we'll talk about general availability in terms of what solutions are available today. And we will also take a look at what is being worked on and what is in our backlog as well. So that will give us a good overview of where things are from a mobile perspective. And then we'll take a look at a quick demo of some of the new apps that we have released and we are working on. So that's kind of the agenda. And towards the end, last 15 minutes, we will open up for Q&A. So from a framework concept perspective, I think it is important for us to view this holistically, not just from a Dynamics 365 for Operations mobile framework perspective. So if you are aware of the common data services and the Power Apps concept, there has been discussions around, should we take mobile framework or is it Power Apps or is it common data services? So I think it is very important to understand the differences between each of these platforms and capabilities and why one should use one versus the other. So this slide kind of summarizes that concept, and you will get the presentation material as well, so you don't have to spend time taking notes. But I think in today's session, we will focus on the mobile platform, which is the first column here, which is Dynamics 365 for Operations Mobile. So anytime there is a scenario where we have to surface data from AX, from Dynamics 365 for Operations to the end user on a mobile device, then the mobile platform that comes as part of, or that is part of the Dynamics 365 for Operations platform is the framework that we should be using. Whereas if there are scenarios that cross multiple products, if you will, for example, AX and CRM, and if there are scenarios where somebody wants to enable capabilities around pulling data from CRM and then surfacing it up to the end user with mashing up some data from AX. So if there are scenarios that cross different product boundaries, then that is when the common data services and Power Apps, comes into play. So without going into each and every bit of detail on this slide, because you will certainly get the slide, I think the key for us is to understand these two concepts at a very high level as to when one should look at using the mobile platform and when one should look at using the CDS and the Power Apps platform. In this session, we will focus on the mobile platform or the mobile framework, which is part of the Dynamics 365 for Operations platform itself. From a concept perspective, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the concept. If you have attended the previous Tech Talk or if you have already played with the product, you are familiar with that. But for the rest of the folks, the key differentiation that we are striving towards using the mobile platform is to propagate this concept of creating mobile experiences as easily as possible, right? Now, what that means is typically when you download an application from an app store, you are actually downloading the functionality itself. So you download the app and you start using the app. Whereas with Dynamics 365 for Operations, when you download the app from the App Store, all you will get is what we call it as a shell, the mobile client, which is just a shell, and it will have the basic user interface, if you will, which is the first screen on this slide, which kind of shows you the user profile and some common actions around logging out, logging in, settings, and whatnot. So that is the mobile client, which is nothing but the shell. The key aspect of the mobile experiences are what we call as workspaces. So workspaces is a concept which brings in the functionality into the mobile client itself, but basically it is something that the user is going to create on the AX side itself to create a specific mobile experience. So we will take a look at that as well. in our quick demo. But the concept to understand here is the mobile client has the intelligence to understand all the metadata that comes from AX via the workspaces, and mobile client understands how to render a form versus how to render a list versus how to render a drop-down control and so on and so forth. So the workspace is basically an XML file that gets generated when you create the workspace in AX. And then when the mobile client connects to the target AX instance, it just pulls down the workspace XML. And that is what shows here when we call app dashboard in the second screenshot here, which shows the list of items, if you will. That is nothing but the list of workspaces. So each of these workspace is nothing but an XML file. And as you drill into the workspace, you get into the details of that specific app experience. Right. So for example, in this slide that we have, there is a workspace for time and absence reporting. There is one for employee self-service, one for expense management, and one for sales order processing and inquiry. So as the user drills into each of these workspace, they get into that app specific functionality in terms of what lists they will see, what fields they will see, and what kind of forms they are going to see. And that is what is laid out here from a conceptual perspective in terms of the dashboard, the workspace, the list page, the details page, and then the actions and whatnot. So this is the high-level concept. In the demos, we'll see how we can quickly create a workspace and push it to a mobile device. And we will also take a look at some of the standard applications that we are shipping as part of the various releases. So to summarize the concepts around the mobile platform, mobile client is equal to the shell that we talked about, plus the workspaces. Right? Without the workspace, the mobile client is just a shell. There is nothing much somebody can do about it or with it. So you have to have workspaces, which is the real functionality which comes into the mobile client. The shell is downloaded from the App Store, like we talked about. The workspaces are designed in AX using the designer. So we will take a look at that in the demo. Workspaces are published to make them available to the mobile client, and workspaces can be exported into XML and imported back. So once you look at the experience of creating the workspace, then you will be able to relate to what this means. So think about a business user creating a workspace for a simple scenario, like for example, showing the list of invoices, right? So they have created that experience and they have that workspace created. Now, what is a quick mechanism for somebody to, enable that workspace in a different AX instance, right? If they want to, send that XML to a different AX instance, what is the quick way? So they will be able to export out and they can import back into a target AX. So that way, they can quickly test it out. And this also opens up a good story around the ALM as well, right? The XML kind of becomes the source code for that app experience. So you can check in that XML into your source control. And then if in future somebody wants to make changes to that, you just import that XML into target AX and then make the changes and then again make it part of your source control. That way you have versioning as well on the XML. The next concept was, shell and workspaces are serviceable components. So basically the shell is nothing but the mobile app. So the app gets updated just like any other mobile app in the stores. So as and when we release, new client versions, or as when we, provide fixes, these will be available through the mobile store itself as normal updates. And the workspaces themselves are also serviceable components as hotfixes, just like any other hotfixes in Dynamics 365 for operations. So the concept there is the XML files that are created for workspaces will be represented as a resource in AOT. And that is how that becomes serviceable, because when you install the hotfix, the resources get pushed to the corresponding node in the AOT, and that's how the system can identify what are all the workspaces that are in the system. So that's kind of the serviceable nature of the workspaces. And last but not the least, the mobile platform, the mobile framework supports offline capabilities built into it natively. So all the workspaces that we build on top of the platform will get offline capabilities by default without having to do any extra effort on the workspace side or the application side. So, typical scenarios from an offline perspective is, I have a list of invoices that is assigned to me for my review, and I'm already on a plane. Now, I can still continue to look at the list of invoice. I can drill into the invoice details. I can, take actions on the invoice, at which point the actions are cached onto the device. And next time when I connect to AX, once I get connectivity, then those actions are sent back to AX, and that is when the action is actually taken. So that is a simple scenario where offline, a simple scenario for offline, but the point is all this capability is built into the platform itself. So from an architecture perspective, what this diagram is trying to show is basically how the interactions happen between the mobile client and the AOS on the AX side or Dynamics 365 for operations side. For those of you who are familiar with the task recorder concept, basically behind the scene, the task recorder is what is used to generate the workspace for the mobile, and we'll take a look at that in a short while. So anytime the user is interacting on the mobile device, basic interaction is replayed on the AOS side, and hence what happens because of this model is that any business logic validations or any code that is written on the AX side on the forms also get executed automatically when the business process is getting executed from the mobile device. So there is not additional code that anyone has to write just to accommodate the mobile scenarios. The business logic, the validations, and everything that is there on the forms on the AX side will get executed from the mobile as well. And from a design guidelines perspective, we'll talk a little bit more about this as well. I think the page design, form design, and action design are three main components that make up for a mobile experience. Page design as in, how many fields you should have on a mobile form, because it's a smaller form factor versus the AX form, which is for the desktop. So you may have 25 columns on a grid in the AX side, but we don't want to show all the 25 columns or fields on the mobile. So I think some thought has to be given around what kind of page we need to design. And the second one is from a form perspective, the guideline from the platform from a mobile framework perspective is try to design your forms that are conducive to the mobile development. And what that means actually is explained in detail in that URL. There is a wiki called Mobile Development Handbook. So highly recommend to go through that handbook because it talks about detailed examples as to what one should think about when they are designing their mobile application. From a best practice perspective, it is always recommended to design mobile forms in AX that are different from the normal legacy AX forms. And I will talk about it in a short while as well, that even Microsoft is writing mobile-friendly lightweight forms for the application side to enable for flexible design on the mobile experience as well. And last but not the least, the actions that we want to enable on the mobile application. For example, what kind of workflow actions do we want to enable on the mobile side? Right? I mean, we may have 5 or 6 different actions that are enabled for the desktop experience, but should we enable all those 6 actions on the mobile experience? So some thought has to be given in terms of what kind of actions that we have to enable. And based on that, the recording has to be done on the AX side to generate the mobile workspace. Now, I have pulled this example from one of the hotfixes that we shipped for enabling the invoice mobile approval scenario for the 7.1 application. Now, if you look at this, there is a total of 11 forms which are all mobile specific, right? Now, if you are familiar with the vendor invoice functionality on AX side, then you can recall that there are corresponding desktop version of these forms as well. So there is a vendor invoice assigned to me list page in standard desktop. Now we have a vendor mobile invoice assigned to me list page. The point being, sticking to the guidelines, sticking to the best practice, there are mobile-friendly forms that are created to enable mobile functionality for standard legacy functionality. So if you are building your customizations, you should definitely take into account the mobile requirements as well from a design perspective, and then decide if there is a need to design a separate form for mobile versus desktop, or will you be able to accomplish the requirements from a mobile perspective also within the same form. So there is nothing wrong in having the same form as long as you make sure that the form is going to be flexible enough to enable for the mobile experience. Now, for people who are familiar with AX for a long time, you are probably familiar with all the challenges with the legacy forms that are there in AX. And that is one of the reasons why we are recommending to create mobile-friendly forms, just to make sure that we don't carry over the same kind of limitations that are there in the standard AX or in the desktop version of the forms. So which is why I just pulled up this example, just to give an idea as to what we mean by mobile-friendly forms and why should we do that. Now, moving on to general availability, I'll spend some time on this slide. There's a lot of information on the slide. The mobile client is available on Android and iOS devices. So we just released the March update to these stores as well. So the version 1.3 is the latest mobile client version, which is available as of 2 days back in both these stores. The Windows app for the mobile client is still work in progress. It is coming soon. Overall, from a mobile client perspective, we are on a monthly cadence. So you should expect every first week of the month to get an update on the mobile client from the corresponding stores. From a platform perspective, the platform has been available since update 3. And as we all know, the platform also is on a monthly cadence. So anytime a platform update comes out, you should expect some mobile related enhancements as well in the platform in terms of bug fixes or in terms of any new capabilities. The last but not the least is the actual mobile apps itself, or the workspaces themselves. So as of now, the ones that I've listed here, the LCS screenshots I have, these are the ones that are available as a hotfix on the 16.11 build from an application perspective. So project time entry mobile application is available as a hotfix. The application code for the mobile vendor invoice approval is also available as a hotfix. And this is what I showed in this previous slide, the contents of this specific hotfix, which is all the new forms that we have built. Then the expense receipt capture and expense line entry mobile workspace is available as of yesterday. That is available now in LCS. And purchase order approval mobile workspace was also recently released. And then last but not the least, again, the mobile application workspaces for supply chain management. So there are 4 workspaces in the SCM side. A costing workspace, an inventory on hand workspace, sales order, and vendor collaboration. So all these 4 workspaces are part of the same hotfix, which is available for download in LCS. So this is the current landscape in terms of what is already available for us to go and start using it, start playing with it. Now, in terms of what is being worked on and what is in progress, so these are some of these are the list of items that the team is working on right now. So for spring and beyond, we are targeting to also release the expense entry end-to-end experience. And I'll provide a sneak peek into what that end-to-end experience means. And again, I have some fine prints here in terms of, the timelines are subjected to change, and also the scope is subjected to change. So whatever you see today in demo is based on a pre-release software. So you should take that into consideration in terms of what the actual scope might be and what the actual timelines might be. And the reason why we are sharing the pre-release version of the software is to share in terms of what the capabilities are of the mobile platform, and also to share in terms of what we are working on in terms of releasing new capabilities, so that you can take that into consideration in your project planning, in your interactions with customers, in your projects, and also items that you should not be looking at, building by yourselves. So I think bringing that awareness is very key from our perspective, and hence we are sharing the pre-release software information as well. So take that with a grain of salt, specifically around the scope and also on the timelines. The next piece that we are looking at is expense approvals, followed by company directory related scenarios where you should be able to quickly search and view contact information for people from the global address book. Last but not the least, from a HR perspective, we are looking at some self-service scenarios where a manager can view their direct reports and extended reports, and also send some praises when they accomplish something in their work, right? So these are some of the items that we are actively working on. Whereas from a backlog perspective, things that we want to get started soon once we are done with the backlog are items like approving timesheets, submitting timesheets, and viewing my project task list from the work breakdown structure in AX. So one call out that I would like to make is, you must be wondering that there is a project time entry hotfix that is already available, and then I'm talking about submitting timesheets as a backlog item. So basically the hotfix that we have today, which we will take a look in the demo also, is the ability to capture time. So you can enter time and send it to AX, but you will not be able to submit the timesheet from the mobile device as of today. So the hotfix we are talking about allows you to just capture time, and then eventually you go into AX and then you do your validations, do the cleanup, and then make sure whatever you want to submit is what you submit from AX. Now, going forward, as a backlog item, we also want to enable submit scenario from the mobile device for the timesheets. So that is why you see that calling out as a separate item. So that was a quick wrap-up summary on general availability, meaning what is already there, what is work in progress, and what are we looking at in terms of beyond the work in progress. Now, before we jump into the demo, we have an ask of you. So you must have noticed that when you signed up for the session, you were asked a survey question in terms of, do you have any scenarios that you see that is conducive for mobile? And if so, please share those scenario list with us. So that the reason we were asking is we want to really understand what your needs are in terms of mobilizing the scenarios for your customers or within your organization. But basically, every Dynamics 365 for operations implementation, we are reaching out to find out what are the core scenarios that you see make sense to mobilize using the mobile platform. Once we have that information, we would like to engage with each of you who have responded to have some deeper conversations in terms of how Microsoft can help you in building those scenarios, right? It could well be a standard out-of-the-box capability and scenario, which we can look at enabling if there is sufficient interest from the field, and that is what we want to understand. And also, if it is not a standard out-of-the-box scenario, it is something built on or to be built on your customization or your ISV solution, then we still want to listen to that and see how we can help in your development efforts. And then finally, helping us to prioritize our mobile development efforts to make sure that what we build is something that will be readily consumed by all of you. So I think having that conversation is very important for us, and which is why we are coming out with this ask, and hence the survey question that you had to answer when you signed up for the session. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Please send the email directly to me at this email address. with information so that we can get back to you and we can actually have a deeper conversation. So with that, I will quickly switch to demo. I'm going to share my iPhone screen here, so give me a few seconds. So I'm assuming everyone can see my iPhone screen. So basically, this is the list of apps that I have published in my workspace. And these are the apps that are currently available as per the general availability information I shared with you. Now, there are additional apps around SCM, the sales order, the costing, the inventory on hand, which you don't see here because I have not published that on my AX instance, but those apps are also available. So today we will take a look at these 4 different apps from a demo perspective and see what capabilities are going to be available. And I'll also consciously try to call out what is available today in the experience that you're seeing versus what is a pre-release experience. So you can make a judgment in terms of what might change and what, when it might be available versus what is actually available. So before I go into the device, let me also quickly share the AX side of it. So this is the AX instance against which the mobile device is connected. And right now on the expense module, we have a few expense reports that are, assigned to me in the assigned to me list page. And we don't have any receipts right now on the AX side. And similarly, on the timesheet side, we don't have any timesheets created right now. On the invoice side, we have 2 invoices currently assigned to me. You see pending vendor invoices assigned to me list page. And then on the purchase order side, we have 1 purchase order that is assigned to me. So that is kind of the scenario setup we have. And we'll see how that plays into the mobile aspect of it. So from an expense perspective, I'm going into the expense management workspace. And what you see here is the experience that we are currently building. This is work in progress. So this will be part of the end-to-end expense experience that we talked about for Spring. And again, this is a pre-release version, so take it with a grain of salt. But the basic idea is you should be able to quickly look at the number of expenses that are outstanding and the number of receipts that you have, and then you should be able to create a new expense report and also browse through the list of expenses. The other key aspect is, we are looking to expose policy violations through the expense app itself. So here, for example, it says attention required. So if you drill into it, I'll show it in a different experience, but basically the idea is to pop up the policy violation messages itself. So this is kind of the experience that we are looking at for enabling expense entry experience. So now I can quickly go and say I want to create a new expense report. And I'm going to just give a purpose as demo. And all I want to select now is just select the company. That's all I want to do, very simple expense. And now it is syncing the change. So this should end up creating the expense header on the AX side. And we'll take a look at that on the AX side after we are done with the demo on the mobile device. So now here I can go and create a new expense line. I have to select the expense categories. I can say car rental. And I just pick the transaction date. I'll say it is today. I'll put a transaction amount. I'll select a currency. Done. So it is right now syncing the change, meaning it is adding the line back. And now it will refresh this view as well. It is right now refreshing. So right now I see one expense report, with one expense line for car rental. Now, this experience that you're seeing is part of the pre-release software. So this is the experience that we are currently working on to improve and optimize further. And when I say optimize, what I mean is, we're looking at a quick expense entry experience where you can just go and create an expense even more faster. So that is what we are looking at. And then, of course, you can take actions like submit, edit, delete. If I were to submit, now I can enter workflow comments, submitted, and then I can say done. So right now it is actually, submitting the expense report. Now it's going to refresh itself automatically, and the status now changes to in review. So this is kind of the experience that we're looking at from an expense entry perspective. So now this list is also going to refresh. Now the next experience that I wanted to show is receipt capture. So I went into the receipt capture experience and I say I want to capture receipt. So I'll just say, this is a receipt for my Uber. And I can say, I can either choose an image from my phone, or I can say I want to take a photo using the camera. So I can say take a photo, and I have this receipt here, and I'll just take the capture the picture. I'll say use photo, and now this receipt is part of my experience here. I'll say done, and now this receipt is being sent to AX as an unattached receipt. So the user can later go back to AX and they can include this receipt when they are filing the expense report. Now, if you recall, when I was talking about the general availability, I said that expense entry and receipt capture is currently available as a hotfix as of yesterday. So when we say receipt capture, this is what we mean, which is we are enabling scenarios where you can quickly capture the receipt and send it to AX. And later, when you are in your office, you can go back to AX and you have all the receipts there. You just have to create the expense report and submit it. So that is the current experience. That is the current functionality that is available. But as we are working through improving the end-to-end experience, we are also looking at how we can include the receipt capture experience into the expense entry itself on the mobile device. So that is the improvement that we are looking at. But basically, this is what it is going to look like more or less from a receipt capture perspective. So now it is going to refresh itself, and now we see one receipt because we just captured one receipt and we sent it to AX. I'm doing a quick time check. We are 1:35. 10 more minutes is what the scheduled demo was for. Another 10 more minutes, and then we want to get into Q&A. So I'll quickly jump into project time entry. So this is an app that allows us to capture time. Like I was mentioning before, you cannot submit the time from the device as of the current experience, what is available out there, but you can quickly create a time entry. You can say new entry. I just want to enter an hour for today. I can select the project for which I was working. It's going to refresh the list. It is pulling the list from AX. I'll select a project, and then I can select the category. I think there is some issue there. So the category lookup is now refreshing, and I'll say, it is consulting. And then I can select the line property as, say, non-billable. And I can say done. So now what's happening is it is syncing the change. It is sending this time to AX. So for this period, for this timesheet period, I have 8 hours logged, or at least created from this mobile device. And this is exactly what we will see on AX side as well. Now, since this was the first time entry for this period, behind the scene, AX also created the timesheet header, and then it added this timesheet line to it automatically, but it is not yet submitted. So the user has to go to the AX. They can add additional time entry or clean up and check before they actually go and submit the timesheet. Now, if I were to add another time entry here, it will just get appended to an existing timesheet itself for the same period. So for example, here I can say, I can change the date to 9th, and then I can enter hours, 4 hours. I can say it is the same project, and this time it is consulting, and line property is non-billable. Then I can say done. So this is now adding this line to the same timesheet that we just created previously. So this is the functionality which is currently available via the hotfix, and you can actually go and take a look at it. I think I clicked it too fast. It was trying to refresh. But moving on to invoice approvals, this is the invoice approval experience. So I have 2 invoices. I think the video refresh is slow, so I'll talk slowly now. So you are seeing 2 invoices for my review. I can go into one of the invoices. I can see invoice details, and it is still fetching the data. It's pulling all the data, including attachments and the distributions and everything. And I can look at the distributions. Basically, it pulls the coding for this specific invoice line, and then I can also look at the attachment, and I can go and open this. I talk slowly because of the video refresh issue, and then I can actually open up the attachment. So the invoice attachment just opened up the PDF. I can go back, and I can actually take workflow actions. So here I can do workflow actions that are applicable to this invoice based on what state it is in. So I can say I want to approve, for example. I can say this is approved. And it is syncing the change. So once it is synced up, the invoice gets submitted to workflow, and it should disappear from the list here because it is no longer in my queue. It is sent back to workflow. So that was a quick invoice approvals demo. Similarly, the purchase order approval is also based very similarly to the invoice approvals demo or the invoice approvals app. So it is right now pulling all the data for this specific PO, and we can see the PO line. It is pulling the data, and we can look at the accounting distributions for this specific PO line. We can see what coding was done, and then we have the attachments just like the invoice, and then we can also take an action just like the invoice. So this time we can take a reject action because on the invoice we took a approval action. I can say rejected, like I said done. It's going to sync the changes. And once I come back, I can refresh, and the PO is gone from my list. So that was a quick demo for these various experiences for the different apps that is currently out there, which you should start to look at. Now there are additional apps that are available which I'm not demoing right now, but those are the SCM apps which we talked about earlier around costing, on-hand inventory, vendor collaboration. Those are also available. You can certainly download the hotfix and start playing with it. So I think with that, we can, the demo on the mobile aspect is complete. But before we open up for Q&A, there's one last thing I wanted to quickly show, which is, if we refresh this expense list, it's actually quite slow. So we see one more expense report showing up here, 411 for $130, the car rental that we submitted. So it is showing up here. Now on the receipts, unattached receipts, if I refresh now, we should see the receipt that we sent for Uber. It is right here. Now on the timesheet one, if I go back and refresh, now I should see one timesheet for this period that we sent from the mobile device. Now the second time entry seems to be in a different period, which is why it is not part of this timesheet. But if I change the period, we should see that. Now on the invoicing side, we have 2 assigned. We took action on 1. So we just see 1 on the AX side as well. And on the PO, we just had 1 and we took an action on the PO, and we should not see anything on the AX side as well. So let me refresh this again. So I think with that, we can open up the questions for the session. Janice?
All right, Sunil. Yes, we do have a couple questions in the Q&A panel. The first one is just confirmation. The mobile app for Windows is not available and will be in the upcoming months. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The mobile client is currently not available in the Windows Store. It will be available very soon.
Great. All right, on to our next question. It's more of a question followed by a comment, so here goes. When will we see retail store mobile enablement? We need to be able to view regular price, discount price, inventory on hand, receive and send purchase orders, transfer orders, etc. Retail store functionality is very lacking. And then there's a follow-up comment. Also, printing bin labels for a retail store from a handheld.
Okay. Do we have, Archana, are you there on the call to speak on behalf of retail if you are aware of the developments there? If not, I will take this as an action item and we can get back to you certainly. Janice, please take note of the contact as well so that we can get back.
Certainly. All right. And then our last question that we have is, where is the actual received expense receipt stored?
So the expense receipt is stored as part of the Azure blob. So if that was the question, physically, yes, it is stored in the blob.
Great. And then we have a couple more questions coming in. Just want to clarify that the Invoice Approval app is created as a walkthrough via the wiki article. The PO approval is a pre-release that is not available yet.
So the invoice approval, correct, is the workspace itself is not available currently as a hotfix. The hotfix gives you the building blocks where you can go and build the workspace very easily and then you start using it. Whereas on the PO side, the hotfix includes the workspace also. So if you just download the hotfix, then you will be able to see the workspace. Now, talking about workspace, I also want to quickly show you the improvements on the process in how you can consume workspaces. So let me go into system administration and I will go into system parameters, and you should start seeing this new tab called Manage Mobile Workspaces. Now, these are the list of workspaces that is currently there in my AX instance. And please remember, this is a pre-release software build that I have. So there are more, things that you see here. But once you download and install the hotfixes, you should start seeing the cost management related workspace. You should see the expense management workspace, but the functionality which is available as a hotfix, but not what I showed you today in the demo. But you should definitely start seeing the expense workspace, and then the on-hand inventory workspace, the purchase order approval workspace, and so on and so forth. The only thing that you will not see is invoices for approval, because the hotfix that I talked about does not include the workspace. It includes all the underlying components that are required for you to build the workspace. But once you build the workspace and you go through the the development process that I talked about, where the workspace becomes part of the resource in AOT, then you will start seeing that here itself. And as a system admin, you can actually select and you can say, publish mobile workspace. It gets published from here also. Next question, Janice.
All right, and we have one more in here. It says, are these apps that are demoed actually written in Power Apps or more detailed?
So the apps that we have seen today, they are all built using the mobile platform in Dynamics 365 for operations. And the mobile platform is part of the normal AX platform itself. It is not using the Power Apps or the Common Data Services platform. Now, the other piece of information I wanted to share is, let me quickly show as well. So I'm already in the mobile mode. If you notice, I have this here, mode equals mobile. And then I can actually invoke the mobile designer. So if you see, now this is a comparison here, right? On the left-hand side, I have all the possible workspaces that are there in AX, whereas on the right-hand side, you only see the ones that I have published. And the rest I have chosen not to publish, which is why you don't see it here. Now, coming back to the question around, sorry, Janice, can you repeat the question? What was the question?
One sec. Yep, just give me 1 second. I'll get it back out. Where do you set up the permissions at the user level to access these workspaces? Or I'm sorry, that's that's the next question. Apologies. So this is the one. Are these apps that are demoed actually written in Power Apps or more detailed?
Correct. So what I wanted to show was, for example, let me pick the PO as an example. If I say edit, so like I mentioned earlier, this is built on the Dynamics 365 for Operations platform and its mobile capabilities. But in addition to that, I quickly wanted to show this aspect where you can actually associate a JavaScript for enhancing the experience and enhancing the functionality that you want to offer to users on the mobile device. So JavaScript plus the mobile platform is what is used to write these mobile applications. And the next question, since Janice read that, I know what the next question is, which is, where do we set the configuration for security for these workspaces? So the security configuration for workspaces is just like any other role-based security concept in AX. You can configure any role to have access to a specific mobile workspace. As of now, if the user does not have access to a mobile workspace, they will still see it on the mobile device. But if they try to access it, they will get a message that you don't have access to that. So we are working on improving that experience also, where the user should not even see if they don't have access to a specific mobile workspace. Next question, Janice.
And that's actually the last question in the queue. So we do have a couple more minutes. If there are any more attendees out there that would like to submit their questions, you can do so now. While we wait for those to come in, I'd just like to take a moment to bring your attention, the attendees' attention, to the link that I posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference. We ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. If you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. All right, and I still don't see any questions in the Q&A panel there. So do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up, Sunil?
No, I think I just want to reiterate the ask that we had. I think that is very important from our perspective, and also from providing mobile experiences to our customers as well. So we really look forward to engaging with each of you, but we need to know what scenarios that you are looking at so that we can have some meaningful conversation. So we'll take a look at the survey response after the call, and we have one more mobile tech talk day after tomorrow for the European time zone. So we'll take a look at both the survey feedback, and then we will reach out to each of you that have responded, so that we can talk a little more detail about the scenario and how we can help you. But even if you have not responded to the survey, and after looking through the demos, and if you now want to engage with us, feel free to send me an email, sunilg@microsoft.com, and we can certainly talk about how we can help you adopt mobile capabilities.
All right. Thank you so much, Sunil. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude today's web conference. Attendees can access the web conference recording via a link that will be delivered within 3 to 5 business days post-conference. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Sunil, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today. You may now disconnect from the broadcast.